Hello, everybody. It's the Horror Guys again with episode 247. I'm Kevin,
I'm Brian.
and we're going to talk about some horror movies that we saw.
Yeah, we are.
And
And a short, yes. All right. Before we get going, got to mention again that all our reviews are available at horrorguys.com. Just stop in there and read them. We got a couple of new movies this time, and we're not going to spoil them to death.
No, but if you want to see them spoiled to death, you can check it out on the website. The full review will be there.
The full review has
full
the full
discussion,
synopsis, including the spoilery endings,
what we thought of them, and yeah.
or what we didn't think of them.
But
in
here
some
we'll
cases.
just give you a little taste of the new stuff.
Yeah, so this time, what are we going to have?
Well, we got the brand new one, fairly new one, Talk to Me, and also a new one, The Outwaters, a old classic, The Hills Have Eyes, and we're going to talk about number one. Number two is actually one of our bonus films.
Which you can read about the bonus films over at horrorbulletin.com, which is our newsletter site. Once a week we put out a newsletter, just one email a week, that has all our reviews in it. Yes, it's a long email, but every week we have all the regular reviews plus 2 reviews in there. That's perfectly free. There's no spam. It's just the newsletter. And even if you don't want to sign up for the newsletter, you can read the bonus reviews at horrorbulletin.com. You can just get on there and read the old stuff right on the screen. You don't have to sign up for anything.
Isn't technology amazing?
When it works.
Yeah.
Well, what else we got? We're not done.
Our fourth one we're going to fully discuss is Bloodlust, Subspecies III. They kept making them.
Yeah, and if you're on that newsletter last week, if you read the headline, I had Subspecies 3 in there. That was really Subspecies 2. I put too many I's in the I's.
I, not I.
So last week on the bonus newsletter, we did Subspecies 2. This is really, truly, honestly, Subspecies 3 this time.
And Subspecies 2 and 3 were interesting because they basically filmed them at the same time. They knew that 3 was going to come out, and it could have been one long movie, basically.
I think it was probably intended to be, and they just, ran over.
Yeah. It's like, oh, this is too long. Let's split it into 2. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then our other bonus film is The Howling 4, the original Nightmare, which was kind of a hot mess.
Oh.
But we'll talk a little
More
bit
mess than hot.
We'll talk a little bit about it here, and you can read all about it on the website newsletter.
Yeah. Okay, and just this past week, we did have a new book come out. Not exactly, sort of, kind of, but of course we have the Horror Guys guides to all these different things. Peter Cushing, Vincent Price, and so forth. So forth. The other 8 books are now so forth.
And so forth.
Universal Theater, Shock Theater, Son of Shock, Hammer Horror, Silent Films, and probably 1 or 2 that I'm not thinking about. But in addition to those, I also write a series called the Old Time Radio's Listener's Guide, which if you like the old horror movies, there's a lot of old horror radio shows out there.
Yeah, some of those are actually, the episodes are surprisingly good. Horror and science fiction and fantasy. But yeah, a lot of them are heavy on horror.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, for years now, I've had a book out called The Old Time Radio Listener's Guide to Dark Fantasy. And that was a 29-episode horror series that ran for less than a year back in the 1950s. Then came the Horror Guide... No, not the Horror Guys Guide. The Old Time Radio Listener's Guide to Box 13, which is a 52-episode crime drama, basically.
So there was that transition in the good old days where there was just radio for a while before television was really a thing. And then television did become a thing. But the radio shows were still trying to be relevant and trying to keep people interested.
Oh, I think they were very relevant still in the 50s.
Oh, yeah. But they started cranking up the quality and, going for the production values because they knew they had to compete with television. And they did fairly well for a while.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It was all they had for a very long while.
Oh yeah, but this is the period where they had both, and they were working hard to compete. So.
And the new release just this past week is the Old Time Radio Listener's Guide to X-1. X-1.
Yep, just like that.
Yeah. And that is M-I-N-U-S, not the minus sign. It's not an algebra problem.
Those were heavily science fiction, but it certainly had some horror elements to them.
Oh, yeah. There's some good stuff in there. Well, I think a lot of horror people like science fiction. Is why I'm bringing it up.
A lot of the classic authors of that time, Ray Bradbury and big names, they would get
Isaac
their
Asimov, Arthur C. Clarke,
and adapt
all
them.
those guys, Robert Heinlein, all had stories in there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if you've ever read any of the Horror Guys guides, the way we do the synopses, and the summary and the commentary, these are pretty much the same thing, only with short half-hour radio shows that are available. You can listen to these online, so it's
Kinda
not like you had to have listened to them 70 years ago.
Podcasts before they were podcasts.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. A lot of the new, like Serial and things like that are, modern day radio dramatizations, they had those back in the 1940s. It's the same thing.
Basically, yeah.
All right, and one more thing before we get to the movie, I want to do a rant on Shudder.
Okay.
We looked yesterday at the movies that are on Shudder. We unsubscribed to Shudder about 2 months ago because they didn't have anything new on that we wanted to see.
And we got so many other sources. Tubi has turned out to be a really good source for
Tubi's
old stuff.
awesome.
Yeah. Shudder. They just, something.
What do they got, like 3 movies a month now?
Something has gone terribly wrong with Shudder. Yeah.
If you'd have asked me a year ago the best place to find horror movies, I'd have
would
said
say
Shudder. Yeah.
Not anymore.
No.
Yeah.
They've gone so far downhill.
Yeah, there's a limited selection, limited new stuff every month. It's Halloween coming up, for crying out loud.
October.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're kind of meh. Yeah. There's some. I mean, there's things there, but yeah, they aren't what they used to be.
If they get something fascinatingly fantastic, we may sign up again, but wow, that's disappointing.
Didn't seem worth it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, Tubi is the place to be right now.
Yeah, they got tons of stuff.
Peacock is pretty good. I mean, HBO is always good, too, if you get that. But it's I don't know, maybe the pandemic had a lot to do with the horror resurgence last year and the year before. This year, there's been, there's a lot of indie films out there. Mm-hmm. But it seems like things may be a little slower this year in the horror side of things.
A little. Still plenty, though.
Oh, yeah.
Like this new one that came out, for instance, Talk to Me.
Tell it to the hand.
Talk to the hand. Yeah. Yeah.
Talk to Me 2023, directed by Danny Philippou and Michael Philippou, written by Danny Philippou, Bill Heinzman, and Daley Pearson, stars Sophia Wilde, Alexandra Jensen, Joe Bird, and Oris Dunge. Hour and 35 minutes, trailer in the show notes. You may have heard of this one. It's getting a lot of buzz.
It is, and it's worthy of it.
Spoiler-free, what's it about?
Well, this was well acted and directed with excellent special effects. And you know how there's the kind of the trope of, playing with a Ouija board and things get out of hand? Well, this takes it to a whole nother level with a mummified statue hand instead of the Ouija. And, we liked it a lot.
Yeah, it's very good. All right, so I'm not going to spoil the entire thing, but at least the first little bit here. Mm-hmm. Cole comes to a big party looking for his brother Duckett and ends up breaking down the door to get into the room he locked himself into. And we're assuming he's like on drugs or something like that and took an overdose. But no, that's not it. He's just crazy. Duckett then...
a reason.
Yes, he is.
There's something had an effect on him.
Duckett then stabs his brother and then stabs himself. The party is over and the credits roll. Mia, somebody else, a whole new character and a whole new thing, goes to a funeral and talks to her aunt. Riley calls for her to come pick him up. They drive along, but then they stop when they see a dying kangaroo along the side of the road.
Reminding us that this is set in Australia.
Yeah, which really isn't all that relevant, but okay.
Yeah.
Riley wants to put the thing out of its misery, but Mia drives on. She just couldn't do it. They go home and tell Jade what happens, and Sue comes home. She's Jade and Riley's mother. Okay, now, I didn't think much of it when we watched this, but that kangaroo thing doesn't have a whole lot to do with anything.
Not really, no. Well, kind of, gives some character development, what these characters are like, how squeamish they are about death, and, I thought it was nice. It was furthering the characters that we didn't know very well at this point.
Well, all right.
Yeah.
Well, later that evening, Mia, Jade, and Riley sneak out. Their mother knows they're going to a party, but they all say, no, we're not. There's no party. They watch a video of a possessed kid on their phone. They then go to a party at Joss's house, but Mia's not real comfortable there. Daniel, Jade's boyfriend, also shows up at the party.
And it's time for a party game.
Yeah, Mia volunteers to go first because she kind of knows what's coming. Haley explains the rules. She cannot let it in for more than 90 seconds or it'll stay. They bring out a mummified hand and Mia touches it. She says, "Talk to me," followed by, "I let you in." And then she sees a dead man in front of her, and the ritual allows her to be possessed by the dead man.
Yeah, you say, talk to me, and the spirit will appear across the table from you. And then if you say, let me in, it'll actually possess you. What fun. What a fun party game.
Everyone laughs as weird things happen, and Mia's eyes turn black. As 90 seconds approaches, she won't let go of the hand, and things get a little weirder. Then later, Mia wakes up. That was amazing! Later at home, Riley admits the hand game scared him a little bit. Mia tells him how her mother killed herself with sleeping pills. The next morning, Jade tells Haley she wants a turn with the hand tonight. Sue tries to sniff out the hint of a party, and she's really persistent about it, and again, they all deny that there's a party.
Nope, no party.
That night at the party, it's Daniel's turn at the hand, and they talk about the origin of the hand, but it's not completely clear to us what the origin is.
I don't think it's clear to them either.
Nah,
Nah.
just rumors and urban legends.
Uh-huh.
Daniel takes the hand, says the words, and immediately things get creepy. The spirit makes it clear that Daniel likes Mia more than Jade, which doesn't go over well, and then he touches himself embarrassingly. When the time is up, Daniel insists they delete the recorded footage, but a couple of the friends refuse, thinking it's hilarious. It's all very intense, but afterward they all take a turn, and it's clear that none of them are faking it. It's all just for fun.
Uh-huh.
Now, of course, you can probably guess that something's going to go wrong
Something
eventually.
goes
Yes.
south. Yes. You're tampering with things that you shouldn't, and yep, sure enough, it bites them.
Well, the acting here is very good all around. A lot of kids. The little boy in this one is pretty good. He's a weird-looking little kid, but he does the job well.
Mm-hmm. Riley. He's younger.
Riley, yes.
He's younger than the rest of them.
The story itself is unique as far as I know. It's a really good extension of the usual possession kind of trope. But in the middle, it leans a little bit too much on the is she crazy or is it real trope.
There's a little bit of that.
She starts seeing things and is she really?
Yeah.
Well, we really aren't quite sure until the end. Although it's clear that something is really happening at the party, we don't know for sure about Mia and the after effects. And I thought it was really good.
Yeah, so did I. It's a winner.
Yeah.
Everyone should see it.
Best one in a little while.
Yeah.
Maybe not. I'm not going to say best of the year, but
not necessarily
probably
best of
in
the
the
year,
top 10.
But right up there. Yeah, that's really good.
This is October. We're going to have to do a top 10 list in another month or two.
Uh-oh.
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 Shouldn't be hard this year.
Lots to choose from.
Well, one of the best ones from 1977 is coming up next. Or maybe it's one of the worst. It depends on who you ask. Some people really hate this film.
I'm kind of on the fence on it. I don't love it.
The Hills Have Eyes, written and directed by Wes Craven, stars Susan Lanier, Robert Houston, and John Stedman. Hour and 30 minutes. Spoiler free. No matter how messed up you think your family is, they probably aren't as bad as these folks who live in the hills. When another family traveling through gains their attention, a battle ensues, and it's ugly. Still, it's a pretty good movie that has held up well.
Pretty good.
This is a lot like the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, where it's all dirty and gritty and cheap looking.
And it's just real
But
people.
it works.
And it's just real people doing stuff.
Yeah?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. There's no magic.
No, nothing like
no
that.
monsters. No, yeah. Uh-huh.
Well, monsters is debatable.
Well, human monsters. It's just people doing the stuff.
All right, well, what happens?
Oh, we open at a gas station in the desert. Fred accuses Ruby of of her family robbing a military PX. He says he doesn't have anything left to trade with them, no food. Ruby asks to leave with him. He asks if Jupiter or the rest of the pack knows that she wants out. So Fred is a towner, kinda, and Ruby is one of the family. Well, a traveling family stops by for gas with their camper. Big Bob is a retired detective, and his wife wants to see the old shut-down Silvermane. Fred, the gas station guy, warns them not to go that way.
There's always one.
He's a harbinger, yeah. They need to get back down the main road. Just nothing to see here. Well, suddenly Fred's truck explodes, and he pulls out his pistol. There'll be hell to pay now. We hear Pluto call his mother and ask about a car with a camper heading their way. And the camper passes a sign saying they're in a military testing area. And Big Bob drives too fast and runs off the road. Well, Big Bob blames his wife's map reading for their accident. They all get out and talk for a bit, but we can see they're being watched from afar because the hills have eyes. Their axle is broken, and so they'll have to walk to civilization. Both Big Bob and Bobby have guns, and they have 2 big German shepherds, so they aren't afraid of the wildlife or anything. So the family splits up. Big Bob heads back the way they came, and Doug heads further down the road. The women folk and the dogs remain behind with Bobby as a guard. Beauty, one of the dogs, runs off with Bobby in pursuit. The dog vanishes with a squeal, and Bobby runs in terror of whatever did it, falling down a rocky hill. So much for Bobby being the guard. Well, Lynn gets on the CB and tries calling for help. She only gets heavy breathing as a response. Brenda takes the other dog, Beast, out looking for Bobby after nightfall. She finds Bobby, and they go back to camp. Big Bob does make it back to Fred's place, picks up the phone, and it immediately goes dead. Well, he watches Fred trying to kill himself, but Fred says Bob's family is in great danger. Fred talks about his mutant son, who came out so big he tore his mother in half. That's a big baby. He abandoned his son out in the desert years ago, and his son survived and raised devil mutant children of his own. So there's a whole mutant family out there now. We have a guest. Our little cat is meowing. Pay no mind to that. Out of the blue, a wild man grabs Fred, pulls him out the window, and beats him to death with a tire iron. Big Bob starts running and gets chest pains. Papa Jupiter catches him before he can die. He stuffs a cactus into Bob's mouth and pounds it in with a rock.
That's gotta hurt.
Yeah, that looked painful. Well, Doug returns, loaded with junk. Bobby doesn't tell him what happened to the dog. Doug couldn't find other people as the road simply ended, so he came back. Well, back at the family camper, the second dog vanishes. Ruby and Mama hear Beast growling in the night, and they're eating what's left of Beauty. As Lynn and Doug have sex in the station wagon, Pluto siphons off all their gasoline. Bobby gets locked out of the camper while Pluto is locked inside with the women who are all asleep. He steals their food and their weapons. Bobby tells Doug and Lynn what happened to Beauty. Suddenly there's an explosion and they hear Big Bob screaming in pain. Mars and Pluto go into the camper to play with Brenda as the others run to rescue Big Bob. It was just a distraction to get the guys away.
His family's making every wrong decision they can.
Mm-hmm. And the mutant hill people are kind of crafty. Mars eats the family parakeet and then fights with Pluto over the girl. Mars wins and Brenda loses. It's kind of brutal. Big Bob is dying and wife Ethel is completely hysterical. Doug tends to Bob while Bobby storms off, saying, "I'm going to get those bastards." Well, the women charge into the camper. Pluto runs off. Mars shoots Ethel. Lynn stabs Mars, and everybody screams.
It's a little hectic.
There's just a whole lot of chaos going on. Yep. Pluto comes back and steals the baby. And when things calm down, Lynn is dead. Ethel is a mess. Baby is missing. So Doug goes off after the bandits, completely unarmed.
Oh, that's smart.
Yeah. He doesn't find anything and comes back to the camper. Well, Pluto and Mars call Mercury on the radio. He says he wants to eat the baby's toes, and he's not joking. Beast, the dog, who is not dead, pushes Mercury off a cliff and steals his radio. Good
Wait,
dog.
the dog steals the radio?
Good dog.
Huh.
He takes it to Doug. Mama and Jupiter are thrilled with the new baby. Ruby likes it too. Well, Jupiter goes after Mars for not killing everyone. He then yells at what's left of Big Bob's corpse for entirely too long. Morning comes. Yeah, it's just this family, the families, they're just all this stuff happening. Ethel is dead. Brenda's still crying. Doug and Beast are out looking for mutants. Well, Beast mauls Pluto's foot. He really is a good dog. So Jupiter orders Mars to kill the baby. But Ruby has run off with the baby. She gives the baby to Doug, and they both run off together. Back at the camper, Bobby and Brenda carry Ethel's body way out into the countryside and sit it in a chair. Beast returns and finishes off Pluto, while a wounded Mars chases Ruby and Doug up the mountain. Mars jumps on Doug, but Ruby catches a rattlesnake and uses it to bite Mars with. That was a clever move. Doug finishes him off with a knife. Well, Jupiter investigates the dead woman as Brenda and Bobby spring their trap, reeling him in like a big fish. And that just makes him mad. So they set up another trap, filling the camper up with propane gas and booby-trapping the door. Boom! And that still doesn't kill him. But between Brenda's axe and Bobby's pistol, they do finish him off. Happy ending. Bobby, Brenda, Doug, baby Katie, Beast the dog, and Ruby all walk to safety.
Happy ending, you say?
For some.
This is the nastiest movie ever.
A limited happy ending.
Well, the guys probably could have mounted a reasonable defense if Brenda had just stopped screaming for 2 minutes and let them think. My God, she screams a lot.
She is a screamer in this, yeah.
Well, this was pretty brutal for the 70s, but there's surprisingly little gore shown on screen. It did spawn several sequels and remakes, none of which were as good as this original. Much like Texas Chainsaw, the low-budget, cheap, dirty, nasty movie in the beginning was the best of the bunch. Once you start cleaning it up, it's not so good.
Yeah, it loses that element of grittiness, or,
Then in the bonus newsletter, we watched the second movie, The Hills Have Eyes 2.
And that was a hot mess of production. They had production issues, and they used all kinds of
it was like an hour and 20
flashback
minutes,
footage.
and 20 minutes of that was flashbacks of the first movie.
Even the dog had flashbacks.
I've never seen a dog have flashbacks before.
Yeah, like the dog had PTSD.
All right, so this week, as always, we watched a short film. This one's called Rideshare, just released. Written and directed by Alex Magana. Stars Ashley Belote, Michael Delgado, Brody McDevitt, and Aaron Sunisa. It's only 4 minutes long, and you can watch it on YouTube. There's a link in the show notes.
And it's very good.
What happens?
Well, a rideshare driver stops to pick up Amy, and she sees that he likes horror movies because he's got a placard in the back of his car.
Things I like to talk about. Yeah.
And she jokingly asks, "Would you like to play a game from Saw?" Well, he does, in fact, want to play a game, and not everything is as Amy thinks it is, which she soon figures out.
Well, it's a very simple situation, well shot and well acted. It's completely realistic and probably more than likely has actually happened in real life a time or two, maybe.
Or you should think that every time you get into an Uber.
Wouldn't you already think that every time you get into an Uber?
Yeah, you probably would.
Well, it's super short, but it is a complete story, and you never have any doubt what's going on. Like this one a lot.
Yeah, me too.
I like the ones where you know what's going on and it's a whole story,
Yeah.
not just like a scene out of something else.
Yeah, those are nice.
Yeah, this is good. Okay, so yeah, we like that one a lot. Next up, The Outwaters from 2023.
Another brand newish one.
Written and directed by Robbie Banfitch. Stars Robbie Banfitch. Written by him, directed by him, and starring by him.
Uh-huh.
I think he needed a second opinion. Angela Basolis, Scott Schimmel, and Michelle May. It's an hour and 50 minutes.
There's a trailer in the show notes.
Yes, you should totally watch this trailer.
Spoiler free? Shall I spoiler free?
Oh, go right ahead.
Well, this follows the formula of something awful happened to these people and they disappeared, but we found this footage afterward. So it's a found footage. And they put in the work, and it does try to be unique, but it doesn't quite succeed. It takes a very long time to get to anything strange happening. It takes a while after that to things start making sense enough to be interesting. It does pay off. I mean, there's some real horrifying things at the end. It does pay off with, a couple nice tidbits, so to speak. But it's a long slog to get there.
Yeah.
And now I'm going to turn the mic over to Brian, who's probably going to snark the heck out of it, and I won't stop him because I didn't care too much for this one either.
I even put some of your comments in my commentary.
Oh, I'm going to deny I said that.
You did, though.
You have me quoted here while we were watching it.
Well, we open in 2017 with a 911 call of someone screaming in panic. Our screen shows us a list of people and names, all of whom were last seen on 8/8/2017. The camera memory cards were later found in 2022. Yes, it's a found footage film. And we know that it goes badly for everybody right from the very first scene.
Yes, spoiler.
Well, we open with Robbie filming Scott getting a backpack and some things for his birthday. Then we get Michelle singing and doing a recording that's almost entirely auto-tune. Then they fly to see Robbie and Scott's mother, and also Michelle. These various things are interspersed with shots of small, realistic earthquakes, so we assume this is probably made in California. Robbie, Scott, Angie, and Michelle go out to the desert. Lots of random travel stuff happens. At about 40 long minutes in, Scott hears something outside his tent at night, and they all go outside to look around in the dark. They're all terrified at kind of what sounds like thunder or muffled explosions. Sounded like thunder to me.
Or it could have been explosions or, some kind of earth rumblings or something. It was vague.
Yeah. Well, the next morning, Angie complains about all the weird shit that's happening.
And at which point I said, what weird shit?
Up to this point, we have not seen any weird shit at all beyond the noises last night.
There was one point when they were walking in where one of them thought they were hearing a funny noise. And that was like previous to the,
It's the desert. Things make sound.
It's the desert and the wind, and, that was no big deal. And,
well, then,
yeah.
Scott records a high-pitched sound coming from an anthill. He says that
things are getting strange.
Well, he explains that there's water running under the mountain, which I don't know that's all that strange either.
Okay, that doesn't seem that strange.
We then cut to artsy-fartsy footage of Angie frolicking around in the desert with no sound but a baby crying. There's no babies in this movie.
No.
Well, that night, there are more booms from the sky. Robbie sees someone standing on a hill in the dark, and then there's a bright flashing light. The sky opened up, he says later. Suddenly, there's much screaming in the dark as something happens to someone, somewhere. One of the girls screams, "I want my mommy," about 10 times. Someone, you notice how many sometimes, somewheres, you don't know what the heck's going on here.
It's kind of chaotic, yeah.
Someone carries the camera around, but it's either off or pointed at the ground through all the screaming action. And finally, we see Michelle, hysterical, covered in blood, and talking in auto-tune. Well, the sun comes up, and Robbie and his camera get up with it. He's chased by screaming, skinless snakes. These are some loud snakes.
They were, yeah.
After many hours of wandering around in the desert naked, encountering the snakes again and again, he finds his way back to camp. The tents are all soaked in blood. Night falls, and for some reason he's still wandering in the desert naked. The car they arrived in, and all the sane things, seem to have been forgotten. Well, he sees that man on the hill again, and the flickering light comes back, and we cut to him puking up a gallon of blood the next morning. That's a lot of blood.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He then peels off his skin, so he'll be skinless like the snakes. In the distance, he sees 4 people walking. It's the original party just arriving on the scene.
Yeah.
It's a time loop of some sort, but they can't hear him screaming a warning.
But they do vaguely, that was the point where...
That was the buzzing they heard.
Do you hear something funny? Yeah.
Night falls, and Robbie returns to camp where no one can see him. He watches Michelle, who is covered in blood and freaking out. Lots of weirdness continues as we start to hear airplane sounds. And at this point, I'm figuring, they're dead all along. The airplane crashed in the beginning.
But
that's not it, no.
Are you going to keep going?
I'm going to keep going because there's not enough here to be worth spoiling.
Well, it's found footage, and we know what happens. At the beginning, we know, that they don't make it out. So.
I'm spoiling this movie so you don't have to watch it.
Oh.
You don't want me to spoil this?
No, go ahead. I mean, because it's not really. We know it's, it's a found footage and stuff happens, and they spoil it at the end that they're dead.
Yeah,
that they disappeared.
Well, there are many flickering lights and glimpses of blood mingled with donkey sounds. There's some kind of bloody animals growling in the dark too. Then there are more screaming snakes in the tent at night. We stop for twisty lights and choral music for a couple of minutes until we return to Robbie, who is standing on a restricted area sign. He then finds a really old gas mask. He approaches the man on the hill with his axe, and it's really himself. In the morning, he finds the heads of his 3 friends on poles in the desert. Robbie then starts cutting off his own body parts. And, that's all.
And we found the footage, and, we knew at the beginning that they were dead.
Now, Kevin has a brilliant quote here. Everybody involved with this should be ashamed of themselves, said Kevin about 40 minutes in. Do you deny this? Do you deny
I
this?
cannot deny this because I was, 40 minutes. Like, really? This is a horror movie, right?
It was like a boring travel video that somebody put up on YouTube. I mean, it's not a story. It's just travel crap.
Yeah,
Random travel crap.
Random footage of these four people hanging out and doing stuff. And say, yeah, well, okay, these seem likable and all, but come on. 40 minutes in?
Well, at 59 minutes in, when something finally started to maybe sort of kind of happen, he said, it's like somebody watched the Blair Witch Project and said, let's remake that, only make it awful. Do you deny saying this? No, he does not.
I do not.
It's not as sleep-inducing as Skinamarink, which we also dearly loved, but it's definitely in the same category. There's no plot here at all. Robbie's camera must have an infinite battery because there's no way he was carrying spares. He was naked after all, and that thing recorded everything for several days. So what happened? I don't know. Why did it happen? I don't know. Why was this film made? I don't know. What are the people who gave this positive reviews thinking? And there are some people like that.
There are many.
I don't know. How can I get back almost 2 hours of my life? I don't know. One thing I am sure about, however, is that this film is a 2-hour waste of time. If you must watch, skip to the last 15 minutes. It's the only time anything happens. And no, there's not really any context that makes it make sense.
See, and you may get a sense that Brian doesn't care for it. I'm not going to admit that.
Well, we talked about our top 10 movies of the year. This may be on that other top 10 list.
The top 10 least favorite? Yeah.
Very much so. Yeah, this was just awful, awful, awful.
Well, yeah. And this is just our opinion, too.
I wanted to peel my own skin off and walk in
see,
the desert naked after this.
I always feel guilty ripping on a movie this badly because these people, they put a lot of work into it and they're proud of it. And there are a lot of people who genuinely like it. So, I'm throwing in the disclaimer that this is our opinion and we're entitled to it. And you're entitled to your opinions, too.
Well, producers and directors sometimes send us screener copies of brand new movies, and they're indie movies. Sometimes they're not perfect. You know how indie movies are. They're kind of cheap looking sometimes. This was a big budget, but this was a wide-released, big movie. They don't get the protection of the little people. We like to say nice things about indie films.
True. Yeah, indie films does get an umbrella of generosity. Yeah.
We see the good things in indie films.
Yeah.
This was a full-blown real release, and it's garbage.
A full-blown studio.
I don't have a problem pointing out garbage when I see garbage.
Oh, my.
Big, stinking pile of skinless, screaming snake garbage.
Just keep... yeah.
Stinky, festering garbage that's been in the desert for too long.
I think that Brian has made his opinion clear.
One I did like...
I'm not going to be that harsh on it. Wow.
One I did like was Bloodlust, Subspecies III from 1994. Again, we've done part 1, and we did part 2 just last week, and we did part 1 way back when. You can find these on the site if you want to read the reviews. Directed by Ted Nicolau, written by Charles Band and Ted Nicolau, stars Anders Hove, Denise Duff, and Kevin Spiritus. Pretty much the same cast as in the second movie. Hour and 23 minutes, trailer in the show notes. Spoiler-free, it's a seamless continuation that feels like part 2 and 3 could have been one long movie. It was filmed at the same time, so it's got the same cast, the same levels of effects, the same settings, and so forth. It's very good and entertaining. If you like part 2, you need to watch part 3 also.
And I think because of that, too, you might lack a little bit if you hop in and start with 3.
Don't watch just part 3, no.
Yeah.
You got to watch part 2
We
first.
would really recommend, actually, 1, 2, and 3, but definitely do 2 before you do 3.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, back-to-back would be fun, if you got the time.
Watch all 5 of them all 5.5 of them in a marathon.
Well, there you go.
It's kind of what we did. For about a week or so, we watched nothing but these things.
Mm-hmm.
And they are, again, I think we mentioned it last week. This whole series is surprisingly consistent.
Yeah, it is.
Usually the first movie of a series is good, and then they get progressively worse as they go on.
I think this one, it helped because they kept so many of the same people.
Yeah, uh-huh.
So, well, Anders Hove, of course, is the main guy in all of them, but the same, production folks, a lot of the same people involved.
Yeah,
That helped the
watch the
consistency.
first one. If you like it, they're all good. They're all very similar.
Mm-hmm.
They don't wildly get better. They don't wildly get worse. It's consistent, which
Yeah.
is good.
Yeah.
Okay, what happens?
Well, we do get a little bit of a previously on montage that kind of catches us up with what happened. Radu got staked. Vampire Michelle got pulled back into the tomb with Mummy, while Becky waits outside, helpless, and credits roll. Kind of gives us a little summary. Well, we open on Mummy with Radu, and just to give you a little refresher, Mummy is the witch. She looks a lot like the Crypt Keeper.
She's a mummy.
She looks about 1,000 years old, and it's been a rough life, but she's not a vampire. She's more of a witch.
She is, however, Radu's mother, so he calls her Mummy.
Yeah.
And she looks like a mummy, so
Yeah,
it's
quite a bit.
sort of a double joke there.
Yeah. Well, anyway, Radu and Michelle are both sleeping on the slab in front of her. She cuts Michelle and bleeds her into a cup, and then she feeds that to Radu, and she does some magic over him.
Because he's dead and staked.
And he gets better.
Yeah.
Yeah. Becky runs through the woods to a pub and calls the American Embassy and Mel. A little while later, Lieutenant Marin and the police come to check out the tomb where Papa Shu was killed. They don't find Michelle, Radu, or the witch. Becky swears they're vampires, but they still don't believe her.
If you live in
Surprising no
Transylvania
one.
and people are accusing people of being vampires, maybe you'd think twice.
I don't know. Yeah. Night falls and everyone wakes up, including Radu. Mummy says her sanctuary has been defiled, so they must leave. They chant some magic, and the whole secret lair vanishes in smoke. Well, I don't think the lair vanishes, but they teleport back to King Vladislav's castle. Radu wants obedience from Michelle, but she's she's not on board. He locks her in a cage until she, comes to her senses. Radu goes out and catches a victim that he brings back for Michelle to share. After she's eaten, he's friendly with her again. And they sleep until the sun comes up. Oh, as the sun comes up. They sleep the day. Yeah. Becky goes to see Papa Shu's secretary and tells her about the old man's death. Mel steals Vladislav's book and the vampire hunting tools. Lieutenant Marin goes to the vampire's castle and yells through a bullhorn, but since it's daylight, there's no response. Everybody's asleep, and Mummy's just kind of hiding. They dig up a grave that Papa Shu found previously. Mel and Becky show up, and they are heavily armed, but the policeman doesn't really care.
The cops are sitting there, and these people come in with axes and stakes and pitchforks and the big weapons.
Uh-huh.
Oh, well, it's
Yeah.
Transylvania. What you going to do?
Yeah, these things happen. Well, he says that they need legal permission to enter the castle, and that could take months because, there's no really good luck reaching the owners. And, well, Mel shows Marin the way inside. They go in anyway, and Marin reluctantly goes in with them. They soon find the way inside that they used before is blocked. Well, Becky and Mel return after dark to see that the vampires are definitely inside the castle. Mel reads the book, and we hear the story of Vladislas and his sorcerer wife, who gave birth to Radu and Stefan. Well, Radu starts training Michelle to use her new senses and to teleport like a shadow, which is a cool effect when they do that. Like teleportation, like they turn into a shadow and then move and then rematerialize. It's neat. They hunt together and talk about life and death. She still kind of hates him, but that's what she says, but it seems like she's warming up to him. Mel calls a buddy with the CIA, Bob. Marin talks about the two people that went missing last night. Some of the village blame vampires. But Marin thinks it's just still black marketers. Americans, crazy people, he jokes. But he still goes along with them. Bob appears looking like a very tough soldier. He's brought night vision goggles and silver bullets. He's ready. Well, Bob scales the outside walls of the castle. Bob and Mel enter alone. Becky warns them over the radio that the witch doesn't sleep by day. And they come across Mummy torturing a woman, and she immediately kills Bob.
Well, that didn't take long.
No, not at all. Marin tries to call for backup, but the radio can't get reception. Night falls, the vampires awaken. He says that her blood is getting bitter. Soon she'll be completely his. Radu and Mummy argue about who owns the old king's treasures. Mummy says Michelle needs to die, but Radu tears the old woman's arm off before beheading her with her own magic knife. And then he throws the head in the fire.
Oops.
Harsh. So she's not going to be rescuing him again. Mel talks to Michelle, but Radu wants her to eat him. Just as she's about to bite him, they hear Becky on the radio outside. So Michelle goes outside to talk to Becky, telling her that she can't leave. Marin, who's hiding in the woods, finally believes the vampire stories, but it's too late for him. Becky pulls her silver bullet-loaded gun on Radu and demands that he release Michelle and Mel and let them all go. Well, Michelle wants Becky to shoot her and kill her. Becky gives her the gun, and she shoots Radu 8 times. Michelle takes the bloodstone, and they all run outside. Radu chases them, but the sun is also coming up, so Michelle again can't leave because sunshine. Becky pulls out a sunproof body bag for Michelle, and they load her into it. Becky throws the bloodstone into the sun, and Radu dives for it. Well, that doesn't go well because it's full sunlight. And he does react to the sunlight. He reacts poorly to the sunlight. And he looks thoroughly dead this time. I'm sure he is.
We'll never see him again.
We'll never see him again. Yeah. Well, Mel carries Michelle out to the trunk of the car, and they all drive away. Drops of Radu's blood turn into little minions who take the bloodstone.
Oh, yeah, we forgot about those guys.
Oh, yeah, as little demon helpers.
Well, this was filmed simultaneously with part 2 and continues right where that left off. We kind of wondered throughout the movies how Radu kept wearing a clean shirt. He drools almost nonstop through all these films.
Yeah, he is very toothy.
He's very toothy, and he's always got blood running off the end of his chin. And yet, he's most of the time,
not a clean eater.
Clothes are clean.
Yeah.
Well, this wasn't particularly good as a standalone film, but when watched back-to-back with part 2, it's a very good story. Again, don't dive into this one.
Mm-hmm.
Radu has to be one of the vampires with the most distinctive look. It's very cool, and we're hooked.
And the practical effects help, and makeup is really good. Gore is good. Yeah.
Still say it needed to be a TV series.
Yeah.
Ongoing Adventures of Radu.
It could have been. Yeah.
Radu meets Chucky.
Uh-huh.
Probably wouldn't help because it's Wrong Killer Toy franchise. All right, then again, over at horrorbulletin.com, you can also read our review of The Howling 4, the original Nightmare from 1988. And it's a werewolf movie that makes you wonder if they forgot to put in werewolves.
Very strange.
We don't see any werewolves until an hour in. It's said to be based more closely on the original book than the first movie was, but it seemed like a wasted opportunity. It's super low budget, and it shows.
And it's not really connected with the others, and it was very meh.
It's a very bland werewolf movie. Don't consider it part of the Howling series, but I mean, it technically is, but it's not.
Right.
All right, and we already talked about The Hills Have Eyes Part 2, which you can also read. It was kind of awful. Too many flashbacks and really bad editing. Wes Craven disavowed the movie after it was released. It's got a few good moments here and there, but it's not a good sequel at all and a big step down from the first one.
It was.
Yeah.
Disappointing.
Kind of sad. All right, well, that's all we're going to talk about this week. Next week, we're going to have 4 more 2023 films. Some new stuff this time. All across the board, all new things. So, yeah, we like the new films.
We do. So much new.
Well, we like most of the new films. Let's wait and see.
Coming out. We like some of the old stuff.
None of them that we watched are as bad as the Outwaters, though.
Bringing that up again.
I'll be bringing that up for a while, probably.
That's the new Skinamarink.
When you totally make me angry after the end of 2 hours, you're going to hear about it for a while. All right. Well, stop in over at horrorguys.com for the website or horrorbulletin.com for the newsletter. Check out our books at horrorguysshop.com. And we'll talk to you next week. I'm Brian.
And I'm Kevin.
See ya.
See ya.